When we introduced the iPhone in January, we said it was the best iPod ever. And people have been asking us and wondering, when are we going to bring this technology to an iPod? Well, the answer to that question is we're going to do it today, and this is what the product looks like. It's 8 millimeters thin. It's unbelievable. One of the 7 wonders of the world. It's just incredible. It features our revolutionary multi-touch interface. We've built in Wi-Fi. We're going to add a Safari web browser. The price for the new iPod Touch with 8 gigabytes of storage, $299. So we're very, very excited about the new iPod Touch.
That's right, this is a first generation iPod Touch. And what makes this particular unit special and why I paid a bit of a premium on eBay is that it's running a very primitive version of iOS. Check it out, version 1.1.5. This thing has not been updated in over 15 years. And that makes it extremely difficult to use in 2024. But more on that later. I hope you'll stay with me. If you're watching this video, whether it be through a phone, TV, or PC, chances are your personal data has already been scattered across the internet for anyone to see. And entities can use it to do a variety of things, including stalk, raise insurance rates even, and commit fraud. And that's why Incogni is here to help. They scour the internet on your behalf and remove sensitive info from dozens of high-profile personal data brokers that sell to the likes of credit card and insurance companies and even malicious websites. Incogni services can also include passive benefits such as spam, email, and call reduction, adding to that peace of mind, knowing that your address, phone number, social security number, finances, and more are well contained. It's also super simple to get started. After signing up with basic information, one click is all you'll need for repeated removal requests and retained privacy. So what are you waiting for? Sign up today via my unique URL, incogni.com/Greg Salazar, to receive an exclusive 60% discount off an annual plan. Again, that's incogni.com/Greg Salazar, or click the link below to get started today. Boy, oh boy, is this thing showing its age. Firstly, get a load of this lock screen. Does that bring back memories or what? This is as original as it gets, folks. Oh, a lovely slide to unlock animation. You do hear a noticeable click sound coming from the device when you unlock it, but that's as far as things go sound-wise. The first gen iPod Touch actually didn't have a built-in speaker. I was wrong about that. I thought that all of them did. Turns out, yeah, you don't get anything from this device. If I want to watch a movie, listen to some music, it is completely quiet, even if I max out the volume. By the way, there are no dedicated volume buttons on this device. You have to do everything on screen. Just another weird quirk of older iPod Touches. Now, I suppose since I've already got a video open, we can discuss the screen a bit. So this is a fairly low resolution LCD. It's actually a TFT display, and that means that your contrast ratio is gonna be pretty bad. I think 800:1 here. You can see the black bars on the top and bottom of this media here. This is a 3:2 aspect, so it's gonna be a little more squared off than your traditional, I should say, modern media. The pixel per inch density is about 165, and the resolution is 480 by 320. There's a 400 megahertz Samsung-derived chip in here, which is kind of funny because now Samsung and Apple are like arch nemesis, but back in the day, this is what they had. They weren't creating their own silicon. There's also a dedicated GPU in here. It's a Power VR MBX Lite. It doesn't really handle too much anymore, and I'm not even sure if there's an app store on this thing, because I haven't updated it. I actually don't know if there's an app store at all. I just noticed that there wasn't one on the home screen. Yeah, we might not be able to do anything on this device other than maybe listen to music and watch some videos. I vividly remember the first time I saw a first-gen iPod Touch in the wild. A friend of mine whipped one out on the bus on the way to a sports game. We were driving, I think, to go play an away team in middle school. And when I saw it, I immediately became super jealous. I wanted one so bad, but my parents were never gonna get me one because these things were just too expensive for middle schoolers, at least in their eyes. Design-wise, the iPod Touch was a radical departure for any MP3 player that came before it. The fact that you could control virtually everything via a screen alone. You didn't have to rely on a scrolly wheel or like physical buttons. That was what made this so appealing. Same goes for the iPhone that Apple released around the same time. I do remember the stainless steel backs of my friend's iPod Touches looking like this after only a few months of use though. This one's actually pretty good considering it's over 15 years years old. Probably hasn't been used for, you know, the full 15 years, but this was not out of the ordinary. It's not like you couldn't just polish this and get it back to a sort of mirror-like finish. I always thought that was futile though, because again, after only a few months more of use, it'll end up looking something like this again. Now remember, I was only in middle school when these came out, so anywhere between the ages of like 12 and 14 years old. I remember this feeling a lot larger in my hand back then, so I've grown. That's partly to blame, but also this is just tiny by today's standards. I mean, this is an iPhone 15. It's not a Pro, it's not a Plus model, and it just dwarfs the first gen iPod Touch. But I've got to admit, this is a pretty convenient size for really everything, in my opinion. The iPhone 3G, the 3GS, were all a bit thicker than their iPod Touch equivalents, but they were all about the same size, length, and width-wise. And this just feels convenient. This is just such a natural shape, natural size for the average hand. Like my hands aren't huge, right? And I know there's a lot of girls out there that have smaller hands, there's some men that have smaller hands. There's a lot of guys that have much larger hands than I do. They have sausage thumbs and they can't even type on a screen this size anymore. I get it. I understand the push for larger screens, but this is just so convenient. You're not holding a cinder block next to you when you're talking on the phone. You're not, you know, feeling like you have literal 10-pound weights in your pockets when you got your phone sitting in there and then you got your keys sitting in the other and you're walking around a theme park and your pants start drooping. None of that with an original iPod Touch. This thing's great. I love this size. Check out that original YouTube app icon though. Is that not a throwback? This was peak icon design, by the way. The very first iteration of it. This looked the best, hands down. You'll never convince me otherwise. Now I wonder what'll happen if I attempt to connect to my home Wi-Fi. I'm not even sure if this is gonna work. Okay, so it's there. Don't ask why I named that Snowden. I'm on first gen iPod. Yes, all right. Just realized we don't actually have a any way to identify that we are connected to a network. That's, oh, there it is. Okay, top left. It looks like we've got a pretty weak antenna though, because it's saying I'm barely connected and I'm literally right next to an access point in this office. So some of the fishy's going on here. What I really wanted to do was attempt to browse the web. I'm not sure how this is gonna go. Let's try Apple's own, can't open the page because it cannot establish secure connection with server. But it is connected to the server. Okay, maybe it's because it's not apple.com. It's trying to take us to like a iPod Touch thing. Here we go. No, it's not working? Okay, what about iTunes? This might be too old as well. Can't connect to iTunes Store. Wow. We're in good hands here. I don't want to update this. I really want to keep this on like its original firmware, or as original a firmware as we can keep it. And yeah, 1.1.5 or whatever this was. This is pretty old. Come on, let's see. Can we go to google.com? Typing on this is god awful, by the way. So I maybe take back a little bit of what I said earlier. Oh, look at that. We're on Google.
A few moments later.
It is on the struggle bus to load a YouTube webpage. It's trying. It's trying to load thumbnails. I just don't think it knows how. It's too old of a device. It's probably got a really weak antenna. It's probably got a really weak processor as well. It's holding it back. And what better way to demonstrate a weak processor than by simply turning the device sideways and enjoying that 5 FPS animation. Yeah, this is pretty rough. I mean, at least it turns sideways. There's that. The formatting is all jacked up though. You can just tell, again, this does not know how to handle modern Google web pages. It always looks like it's about to load something and then just never does. Like I've been trying to get to the YouTube homepage for a long while. I tried my own channel page here. It just ain't gonna work. Let's check out some other apps then, shall we? It's not like we have many to choose from here. Of course, you've seen settings already. That's how we were able to connect to Wi-Fi. You also were able to see the iOS version that we're on, 1.1.5, serial number, all that stuff if you care at all. We've got a wallpaper option here. Remember, this is only good for the lock screen. So like, you know, old enough generations of iPods and iPhones wouldn't let you set a custom wallpaper for your home screen. This is only for the lock screen. So we'll lock it, unlock it, and there you go. This is what the original iPhones used, I believe. So you get the idea. Let's check out the calculator app. That's pretty cool. I'd be okay with this in like a modern device. Let's check out the calendar app. Yep, pretty straightforward. We've got our list, we've got our months. I mean, this is pretty good. It thinks we're in the year 2000. Let's just roll with it. And lastly, our contacts page. Of course, there aren't any contacts here, but it would be very easy to add some if you wanted for whatever reason on an iPod Touch. The YouTube app, I highly doubt is going to do anything. because this is just way too old. Yeah, can't connect. That's not surprising. I doubt this is even supported anymore. But yeah, that's about it. There aren't any photos, of course. I haven't transferred anything. We do have a few videos. For whatever reason, these were preloaded on the device when I bought it, so maybe the previous user did this, but yeah, this is at least a good demonstration of, well, the smoothness of the display. It's nothing to, write home about again, but it is better than what we had previously with MP3 devices. It, of course, doesn't have any baked-in sound. There's no speaker, but I mean, it was good for the time. Now remember, for these older Apple devices, we had this older connector, a very long one, a bit strange. Some folks really liked it for some reason. I thought it was okay. Of course, we have our 3.5mm headphone jack as well. You don't see these on modern devices anymore. And of course, the only other noteworthy thing on this iPod Touch is the lock button. That's it. Again, we don't have dedicated volume buttons. All of that was baked into the OS itself. You also probably noticed in some of the B-roll shots already, this is a 16 gig iPod Touch first gen. Now they offered an 8 gig model, which most of my friends had. It was the cheapest option, so that's the one they got. Of course, once apps became more popular, games would take up more space on these devices, so 8 gigs was pretty much written off by about the second or third generation of the device. But 16 gigs was a decent middle ground back then, and then you also had a 32 gig option that was, of course, the most expensive. If you had tons of music, let's say you wanted to add some videos as well, because you could obviously consume video with this, you would want the most space. But the fact that this doesn't have a built-in speaker in it, in my opinion, ruins the first gen iPod Touch experience to the point where I'd recommend the second gen instead. I know it's not the first, so it's probably not gonna hold its value as well. Who cares? So don't buy this as an investment piece, especially when it's been open. This will never be worth anything more than maybe 100 or 200 bucks. I mean, for the next century, I don't think anyone's gonna pay more than that. They made too many of these, and too many of them are just sitting on shelves. People don't even realize they still have them because they moved on. They moved on to cell phones that pretty much integrated everything an iPod Touch could do fully, and then improved upon it after that, which made these virtually useless. And there's still folks that have like the beefy old school iPods and whatnot, but by and large, everything that you can do on one of those, you can do on a modern cell phone. So why would you carry two devices around if you could do everything on just one device? And that has sort of led to the downfall of the iPod Touch in general. I mean, the last generation did not sell. It didn't do well. Even if Apple priced it probably $100 cheaper than they already have. Why would you spend $100 on that if your cell phone that you're already spending more than $100 on more than likely does the same thing? But when it comes to something this old, why would you spend 20 or 40 bucks on an iPod Touch first gen when you could spend the same amount of money for an iPod Touch second gen that is a little faster, that has slightly better battery life, if I recall correctly, and that also has a built-in speaker? It's the one thing this thing I wish it had, but it doesn't. There's no way to play any music straight off of the device. There's no way to watch and consume media off of the device without using wired headphones. This doesn't have Bluetooth, by the way. No Bluetooth in this thing. It's wired headphones or bust, and that's just, that's a little too quirky for me here in 2024. What do you guys think about the iPod Touch first generation? Did you have one? Did you know a friend who had one, a family member maybe? Tell me about your experience in the comment section below. I am very interested to hear your accounts of this device, what you thought of it, the impressions, just kind of the overall community vibe. I still remember in high school, I think the second most noteworthy Apple experience I ever had as a kid was when I was a freshman in high school and a buddy got a hold of an iPhone 4S. And that had Siri, and I remember everyone just lost their marbles over Siri, which at the time, I mean, looking back, Siri back then was totally primitive and borderline useless, but we all thought it was cool because she talked back to you. It was like the first, mobile device that could do something like that. So that was probably the second most noteworthy Apple experience for me, but the first is always going to be the original iPod Touch, because that was the somewhat attainable thing that actually had utility for me as a middle schooler. And the fact that these are still available en masse on eBay, and as you can see, it's pretty much useless. We don't even have an app store, so we can't surf the web, we can't use iTunes. I'm not even sure if this will connect to a modern PC. I have no idea, but it's a cool piece of history for sure. Check out relevant links in the video description. Consider liking this video if you enjoyed it, subscribing if you haven't already, and sticking around for the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.